Hello and welcome to Inside Tennis Football's practice facility. I'm Ryan Sylvia. This is Noah Taylor. We are with VolReport.com, the Rivals Network. And for the second time this fall, Tennessee football has completed a scrimmage inside Neyland Stadium as they prepare just over 2 weeks from Chattanooga kickoff and just over 1 week from it being game week and kind of changing the way they practice. But we talked to Josh Heupel afterwards. So we'll start with you, Noah. What were your thoughts on what Heupel had to say?
Yeah, just a lot of how much emphasis they put on making this, the communication today and making this as game-like of a scrimmage as they could. And obviously every scrimmage, I assume you want to do that, but today obviously a lot of changes. We talked about logistical changes, the implementation of iPads and things they're using, obviously the communication in the helmets and things like that have been a big topic of discussion since those were approved. But, he talked a lot about having a mock halftime today and the having TV timeouts and things like that. You talk about it 2 weeks away from game week. Seems like, this has been kind of a mock game week for them. And it just seems like, they're going through those changes to college football and really applied that today. And seemingly, he said it was really clean. They did really well on that, which is a good sign. I know earlier in camp, one of the assistant coaches talked about maybe trying to work that out with the communication, the iPads and things like that. It seems like they're doing pretty well in adjusting to it.
And one of the obstacles in that is crowd noise, and how will that affect you when you're in an actual environment like Week 4 at Oklahoma? Heupel said that they added some of that crowd noise in today to kind of deal with that, and whose shoulders that lies on kind of the most is the quarterback position. Nico Iamaleava, redshirt freshman, entering his first season as the starter. He was asked kind of what's the grasp of the offense that Nico has right now, and he seemed like he said, it's where it needs to be. Talked about how there's so much on the shoulders of the quarterback in this offense in changing pass protections. You see some offenses, maybe that's the center or a different lineman. Some offenses, it's back to the quarterback. Usually it's a bit of a collaboration, but Heupel talked about how a lot of it is on Nico's plate and how, as a young guy, he's kind of doing better and better at managing that. However, I did think it was interesting. He was like, I'm not just singling out Nico here, but everybody needs to be better.
Yeah.
Like he made sure it was like, this isn't a Nico statement, even though it's to a Nico question, but everybody in the building does need to get better and does need to have a firmer grasp of the offense and defense and whatever their role is as well. What else did you think about Heupel had to say?
Yeah, he was asked to be a little more specific on, some skill guys that stood out, and maybe reluctantly threw some names out there for us. And some of the names are kind of the usual suspects. We've heard, Deshaun Bishop being a guy, threw Dante Thornton in there, threw Squirrel White in there. But talked a little bit, not just in that answer, but in another couple answers about the tight end room and how impressed he was with those three guys. So they had a really good day today. Was asked a little bit about the depth at that position. Is it going to be, is there going to be one guy you're going to lean on, tight end by committee? I think it's going to be by committee. Alec Ablin pretty much talked about how much that depth has helped a couple weeks ago when we talked to him, and Heupel said it today. Very impressed with what those guys have been able to do. It seems like the coaches have been. But yeah, it seems like they had a good day today, and those were part of those names that he singled out.
Yeah, it really feels like there's going to be all three guys in that tight end room, from Ethan Davis to Miles Kitselman to Holden Stace, that they're all going to get reps throughout the course of the season. Not just like how we've seen in the past, where it's Princeton Fant and Jacob Warren, and then Jacob Warren and McCollum Castles. I think we're going to get that three-man rotation, and you see that practice. When we were able to go to practices here in the fall, it was every day was different who was working with the ones. One day was Ethan Davis, the next day it's Holden Stace, the next day it's Miles Kitselman. Even from like rep to rep, the first time Nico's up, it's Miles Kitselman, the next time it's Ethan Davis. So they're clearly getting all three guys prepared to play, and I'm interested to see how that works, because we've seen it in the past with two, and I think that's worked really well, how it's almost been exactly alternating possessions. But with three guys, maybe you have to ride the hot hand at times, like Tennessee do at the running back position last year, where, okay, Dylan Sampson's having a really good game. Sorry, Jabari Small. Maybe you don't get as many touches as you thought. Or the opposite, Jabari Small is running well, Jalen Wright's running well. Maybe one of the other guys doesn't get some touches. We'll see how they manage that. You mentioned Dante Thornton, though. I thought that was an interesting name to toss in there, because he's had a somewhat quiet fall, I feel like, especially compared to last season when he got here as a new transfer from Oregon. Of course, there's going to be some new shine when you're kind of an incoming transfer, but he was mentioned along that pretty quickly along the list of names at skill positions that stood out. And I'm interested to see how that wide receiver room kind of shakes out, because we think there's going to be rotation at running back like there has been. We think there's going to be the rotation at tight end. What's that rotation at wide receiver going to be? Because sometimes we've seen Heupel swap guys in and out, but for the most part, he likes to kind of keep 3 or 4, maybe 5 guys on the field at a time. So where does Dante Thornton fall into that mix? Well, if he's having a good fall, he's probably going to be able to see some time on the field You have anything else before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think you're right, because we've heard a lot about Chris Brazzell. He's kind of replaced Dante Thornton in the conversation. Yeah, and you're right, a guy that's been relatively quiet from what we can hear, what we can see. But yeah, obviously a name that kind of pops. You expect to hear Squirrel White, you expect to hear Chris Brazzell, but obviously a guy that was coming on last year late before that injury against Missouri, and now back to full health, and it'll be interesting to see how they use him.
Another name to note, Peyton Lewis was tossed in the mix. I can't imagine that Dylan Sampson was to go today. He's been limited for most of the fall, didn't go through the last scrimmage, so have to go deeper onto that depth chart. Obviously, Cameron Seldon's not an option right now, but Peyton Lewis caught Heupel's eye as well when he was asked about guys that stood out. So the freshman already maybe turning some heads a little bit, maybe a guy that could steal some play time as a true freshman, like we saw Dylan Sampson do in his freshman season. That'll do it all from us here, though, today inside Tennessee football's practice facility. Make sure you head over to VolReport.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We will have content on Tennessee football throughout the rest of the offseason that is dwindling down, and then, of course, coverage throughout the entire season. Also, basketball coverage, men's and women's baseball coverage, softball, everything under the umbrella of Tennessee athletics. We have you covered over at VolReport.com. Links to everything you need is in the description. Thank you for watching.